Breakbeat hardcore was a sound that emerged in the United Kingdom in the early 90s before it evolved into jungle. It was an amalgamation of sounds from techno, house, dub reggae, and even hip hop. It took where acid house and techno left off in the late 80s and introduced sped up breakbeats, vocals, and dub bass lines to create that rave vibe that we know today. By the way, my name is Stranger, and if you want to improve your music production and sound design, especially with drum and bass and dance music, then this channel is for you. Some legendary names of old school hardcore include Roughage Crew, For Hero, Manix, Prodigy, Acid, and Tom and Jerry. Now, I'm actually not doing it justice because there are a lot more names, so out to all the old school ravers out there, comment down below and let me know what are some of your favorite old school hardcore artists and tracks. The main lesson in today's video is about creating a vibe. Hardcore producers were less concerned about keeping things on key and making sure things were quantized on the beat. Sometimes things were actually off key and the beats were a bit loose and off the grid, and that's what helped it with its vibe. It was rough around the edges. In this style, pretty much anything goes. So remember this when we're creating the beat. It's less about rules and it's more about just creating a vibe. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed this video so I know to make more of them. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and bell notification so you can stay updated on future videos. Also follow me on Instagram and TikTok where I'm providing additional content. Alright, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, the first thing is my project is at 145 beats per minute. Typically old school hardcore or breakbeat hardcore or hardcore rave, there's many names to it, generally ranges between 140 to 150 beats per minute. As you go into jungle, then it speeds up closer to 160. But we're focusing more around 1993, where the tempo was around the 140s. So that's my tempo. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the first breakbeat. So typically in hardcore breakbeat, we have at least 2, sometimes up to 4 breakbeats layered. The first breakbeat that I have is a sample from Run DMC. I'm not going out like that. Now, for those that know the track, you can sample the break at the beginning of the track, but there is a layer of noise or white noise in the background that becomes a bit distracting. So if you want a cleaner version of the break, you're going to have to sample the kick, snare, and hi-hats from different sections at closer to the end of the track. So that's what I did. I took each slice from different parts of the track and then resequenced the break. And I'm using the funk soul shuffle pattern. If you're unfamiliar with that, then make sure you check out my video on the top drum patterns and drum and bass and you'll be up to speed. Alright, on to the second break, and this one I got from Jungle Warfare. So Jungle Warfare was a popular sample CD back in the 90s. It contains virtually every popular jungle breakbeat that there was. So back in the day, I took every break from this sample CD and chopped it up as a recycle file so I can easily place it in a track. So I simply just took this break and put it into the track. Now, I'm not doing much editing to the breaks. I'm keeping it more loopy, like the style of early hardcore breakbeat, just going more for a vibe. It's later as we move towards jungle when we start to edit the breaks a little more and mash it up. But here, I'm just taking the breaks and keeping it rolling. So let's hear it with the Run DMC break. And then my third break, of course, is the Amen break. A popular break to layer over your drums to make it a little more beefy. And I'm simply taking the second bar of the Amen and looping it. Here are the breaks all together. Now, commonly in early breakbeat hardcore, there would be a 4/4 kick because this was still the gray area between techno and jungle. And there was a lot of different styles and techniques fused into the music at that time. So you would find techno influences, reggae influences, and of course breakbeat and hip hop. So all that was fused into the style, which then became jungle. So typically we would have a 4/4 kick, like in house, layered over the breaks. So layer that with the breaks. And that's pretty much the drums. Alright, the next step, once I have some drums, I looked for a melodic piece to build some vibe. So I found a old house string sample. This sample was found on Splice on the pack Rave Revival, but you can find this type of string sound pretty much anywhere. It's a typical string used in classic house and early rave. It sounds a little dirty and gritty, and that's what gives it its vibe. Now this sample, I'm just turning on the loop mode, adding some crossfade between the beginning and end to keep it a smooth loop. Now using this string, I'm just playing by ear. I'm not really trying to figure out what key I'm on. I'm just playing and finding a vibe. So just play along until you find a melody that you like. So that's the melody I gravitated towards. Actually, this kind of melody was a popular melody back in the day in early house as well as rave. So it's a melody that's common and you may have heard it before. So I just picked it for this track. It just felt right for this vibe. And I just have it in the MIDI here. I just quantized it. All right, once I have the string down, then the next step is to add a piano chord. And this is a popular style to use in early rave to play simple triads with the piano with a rhythm. And simply I pulled in that string melody, so I'm mirroring that string melody. And I'm building the basic triads from these keys. Now, instead of what I normally do, building it up, I built down this time. It just sounded better. So the triad is every other white key, like that. So I'm just copying all the notes and dragging it down. And then again, one more time. So skip the next white key and go to the next one, like that. Now, these are major triads, so it sounds a little more happy. So if you want to make it more darker, take the middle key and turn it into minor by shifting it one note down, like that. Once you have the chords written, then you can make it into a more rhythmic pattern. So you can shorten the notes and then create a rhythm. So we're going to take these guys and we're going to play an 8th note pattern. And then for the other two chords, we're going to play a dotted 8th note. So it's going to be here, like that. And then to make it a little funky, I just moved this note over here. And then doubled up this note and moved this one here. You could also make these notes a bit longer so it fills in this section here. So let's hear it with everything together. Alright, I'm starting to feel that nostalgia. Just one note about writing the chords in old school rave. I'm not really paying attention to any rule or music theory. I'm simply taking the chords and they're moving chromatically up and down the key or scale. So that gives us that old school vibe. Hey, if you want to support me, you can grab a number of my products. I have a gnarly serum preset pack with over 150 face melting bass presets. As well, I have some Ableton project files to jumpstart your next idea. But if you're not ready yet, you can pick up my free serum preset pack and my free sample pack. For more information, check the links down below. Alright, so now that we have some vibe with the pianos and strings, so then I added a sub bass and I'm simply playing a sine wave. And again, I'm just playing by vibe. I'm not really following anything here. I'm playing mostly white keys in this composition. Again, early producers, they were just playing and vibing, and oftentimes the white keys were the commonplace and easiest place to go in. So I'm just using that technique and just playing with the vibe and finding a melody that I like. So consequently, the notes that I was playing were A, F, and G. And the basic rhythm is really just a dotted eighth note repeated like this. And then switching down to the F. Again, dotted eighth notes. Back up to G. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this bass pattern, check out my top 10 bass patterns in drum and bass, and that will get you up to speed on that as well. So let's hear it all together with the drums, strings, and piano. Now this type of bass line with the deep subs is influenced by dub reggae, and that's the vibe we're going for. Now, a common sound in breakbeat hardcore is a pitched up wailing vocal. So I found this vocal sample again from Splice. It's from the Fresh Vocal Hooks pack. And let's pitch it up by 7 semitones, and format is down to 0. Here it is with the beat. Those female vocals are like an icing on the top for that nostalgia. Another really common sample to use in early breakbeat was a hip-hop vocal loop, again pitched up. So I found this pack from Splice. It's the 504 Bounce Vocal Pack by Eric Bardalis. Has some really cool old school sounding hip-hop vocals, almost like Eric B and Rakim, and fit the vibe. So here's the vocal.
Move it when you tear it down. Shake it when you tear it down. Work your ball.
And I'm pitching this up by 6 semitones.
Move it when you tear it down. Shake it when you tear it down. Move it when you tear it down. Shake it when you tear it down. Work your ball. Move it when you tear it down. Shake it when you tear it down. Work your ball.
Alright, once I had the main composition of the track, oftentimes in breakbeat hardcore, you'll have a number of different themes that switch through as the track progresses. Simply what you're looking for is a different lead sound, and you're looking to change up the vibe and mood when the track progresses. It can go from uplifting with the pianos and strings and vocals to a more darker theme with samples such as the Mentasm. So the Mentasm is a classic Rave sample named after the track by Joey Beltram. So if you check out his track, in the very beginning, you'll find a sample. Now I can't play the full sample here, but I'll just play a bit of it so you can get a vibe of it. That's pretty much the sample, and I just added some EQing, some distortion, and reverb or delay. And then I'm simply starting the sample a bit into the sample. So I'm playing in just one bit of the sample as a stab. So the melody I have here is just like this, and it's just something I recorded live. Notice some of the notes are not quantized. I wanted to keep it sounding more human and keep it a little more rough around the edges because that was the sound of hardcore. It was a bit more rough around the edges with things not being quantized, keeping it more human and groovy. So here's the Mentasm with the beat. For some added funkiness, I found a scratch sample in the Shifty scratch pack. Oftentimes it was a technique to layer a scratch sample over the break. It just made it sound a little more funky and cool. Here's the beat with the scratch sample. Then I added a classic donk bass. Now, I'm just using a sample here, but I could have designed it. It's simple to design. It's just from a square wave, but it's a common classic sound used in rave, and I'm mirroring the sub bass pattern. And I'm simply just doubling up some notes to make it a little more funky. Like that. And this is high pass. I already have a sub, so I'm just using this for a little rhythm. Here it is with the beat. Now you may have heard a pitched up sample. That's a James Brown sample. Again, a classic sound to use in hardcore breakbeat. And this one's taken from James Brown Cold Sweat Break. Simply pitched it up and only just used the sample. So let's hear it together. It just adds a nice accent to the beat. So once I had a bunch of layers ready, then I was ready to pull it into the arrangement view. Again, this is my personal process. I like to build up a bunch of ideas and loops, and then it's easier to then go into the arrangement stage because you have tons of material to then introduce through the arrangement. So I'll just go through the arrangement real quick. I have a basic intro with the kick and string. Then I introduce the sub with the breakbeat and vocal. And then I switch to the Mentasm with the breaks and amen. And then again, I switch back to the uplifting or kind of semi-uplifting pianos. It's playing more of a minor chord, so more melodramatic, but it switches up to the piano vibe with the hip-hop vocal. And then the donk bass comes in. And then the string and vocals come back. And then finally, I just needed one more piece. Again, as I mentioned earlier, breakbeat hardcore tends to have a number of different themes that cycle through the track to bring the listener up and down through different places. So I found this old Hoover sample from my sample library. Hoovers are, again, a classic rave sample. It kind of sounds like a Reese sample. So I was just playing a simple melody up the scale. It's kind of influenced by Mannix, Oblivion, Head in the Clouds. So shouts out to Mannix and Reinforced Crew for the inspiration. And this was the melody I had. And here it is with the drums. I also had a sub bass change during the Mentasm, so I introduced a longer sub that has a pitch bend here, just for a little change in vibe when the Mentasm comes in. And between the switch ups, I have this little sample.
Drop. Drop.
Commonly used before a switch up. As well, there's this famous spin back sample. Again, if you know hardcore, then you must recognize this spin back sample. It's used a lot. So that's the arrangement. So out to all the old school ravers, bring out your air horns, your whistles, your fat pants, and your rave shades, and let's check out the vibe. Alright, so that was my take on old school and early breakbeat hardcore. Shouts out to all the old school ravers out there. This one's out to you. Alright, so that was my take on early breakbeat hardcore, otherwise known as breakbeat techno or jungle techno. There's many names to it. Again, the main lesson here is just to create a vibe. Don't overthink things, trying to get things on the right key or getting the beats on the grid. It's more about just going with it, allowing happy accidents to happen, because that's what creates the originality and vibe. Again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. But that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, and I'll see you at the next video.